Hey everybody, welcome back. Marcus Graves back again, this time with some spoiler talk of Amazon's The Boys. Now, I'm not going to be with you long. I just had a couple of ideas, theories, some things that were gestating in my mind, and I really want to talk about two things. One is Homelander, Stillwell, and the babies, and the second is Butcher's wife, Becca. Now, with the babies, of course, we come to find out that the babies are being injected with Compound V, that they're basically have been making supers. This whole farce that they have been perpetrating, this whole farce that they have been presenting about how the supes are born this way, and man, God has really blessed them. So we know that they're making the babies and everything like that. Now, one thing was always out of place in the story. Stillwell and her baby. Stillwell is wearing a wedding ring. Her husband is rarely, if ever, mentioned. To be honest, maybe Homelander brings him up once. I don't really remember any other instances where the husband was brought up. And she's taking care of this baby. And of course, Homelander is jealous of the attention that this infant is getting from Stillwell. And that being part of his characteristic aside, him craving her attention and being self-focused and all this other stuff, all that being aside, it really made me wonder, that mixed with creating soups, injecting infants, she is the CEO of Vought. Vought basically is her. Made me wonder if she's the mother of the children. Maybe not biologically. And we know not biologically because we have Annie, Starlight, who is, this other woman's daughter. But it did make me wonder if she is mothering and nurturing some of their compound babies. Being both in the story, the literal, mother of Vought. She is the CEO, she's the one running the show, and she is the mother of this infant, but this all comes from her, and because this all comes from her, like I said, maybe not biologically, but she is nursing them. She is rearing them. And that's only further solidified by Homelander's behavior with her. There are multiple times in the story where he's either noticing that she's leaking, or resting in her lap, and he's kind of laying in a very childlike position as she strokes his hair, kind of nuzzling against her breast, all that stuff where it's like, did you rear him as well? Because that also gets into a theory I have about accelerated growth. Vogelbaum, I believe it was Vogelbaum, right? Dr. Vogelbaum mentions accelerated growth in Becca's baby. And unreliable narrator as that story was aside, that could be factual. And if the accelerated growth is there, and once again, it was also mentioned that he doesn't, he's in a house when Homelander was doing the spot, where he was in his home with his parents and pictures and everything. He's like, it's pictures of people I never knew. Memories that I'm telling them that I've never experienced, this and the other. So, as far as we know, he has no father. He has no mother. I don't remember him mentioning any childhood experiences that weren't spin from Vought. So, how old is Homelander? How old are some of the soups? Some of them, obviously, are naturally raised, such as Annie. Annie may be the wrench in that theory, because she seems to have memories of her past, her dad leaving, all this other stuff, and it was never accelerated. So, unless they can change it, in Attack of the Clones, Jango asked for an unaltered clone that he could raise as his son that didn't have the accelerated growth pattern. So, it's possible, but never mentioned, so it's a moot point. And also, ladies, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always heard that, yes, they're women have given birth and they're nursing and all this, that, of course, there's leaking that happens anyway. But I've always heard that, like, when a baby cries, like, even if the child is not their child, hearing the baby cry, there's like a bodily response, like, oh, I have to produce for the child. So remember that second episode when Homelander does point out that she's leaking? what is Homelander doing? He's not crying, but he is whinging. He is upset. And she starts leaking. My theory is definitely accelerated growth for Homelander, particularly also because at the end, when we see his son through Becca, Becca's been gone for 8 years. Depending on when she had the baby, Homelander's son is 8 or 7 years old. However, that kid did not look 8 or 7 years old. Maybe, not to me. Maybe I have to go back and watch it. I've only seen it the once. That boy looked at least about 14, 15. But if there's accelerated growth, that would make sense. And if there is accelerated growth, perhaps Homelander is a child that's still well reared and nursed. More evidence to the fact that she kind of made him a son, or he was kind of like a son to her, was when they were having sex, and she kept saying, my sweet boy, you're my boy, my sweet boy. Is like, so now you kind of get into this whole Oedipus thing of, did you nurse him? Was this basically your son? And so that's my first thing, is Homelander, accelerated growth, Stillwell's possible son, Oedipus complex, all that stuff. And since we mentioned Becca's son and Homelander's son, I want to shift to the ending and that whole thing there. Throughout the season, we were seeing Becca being mentioned, Becca through Butcher's memories, and we were told that either Homelander killed her, or she killed herself because Homelander raped her. And the question that the end kind of brings up is she a victim, or is she a deceiver? Deceiver may be too strong of a word, but I also don't want to use opportunistic, because it wasn't really opportunistic. It didn't really give her any sort of higher position or something. So it's weird, but I think you guys know what I mean, where it's like, oh, is she the victim, or is this something else? By the end of the story, the unreliable narrator has been exposed. Vogelbaum and Stillwell provided Homelander with 2 slightly altered stories about what happened to Becca and the baby. Homelander himself, at the end, presents a story to Butcher that the sex between Homelander and Becca, that the sex between them was consensual. She came 3 times, so she enjoyed it. She was having fun, all that stuff. Given the character that was conveyed to this point of Homelander, his disregard for human life and his disaffected nature, it would be a logical conclusion that he is also an unreliable narrator. If he did rape her, he has no affect. He absolutely zero empathy for anyone, but including humans who he dismisses as lower than. Mixed with his hubris, he would think that a resisting individual, oh, well, they want it. Of course they want me. I'm Homelander. Also, there is the precedent of supes wielding their power to manipulate and using their status to sexually assault. We have that conveyance with the Deep and Starlight. But that's the thing. There is one more unreliable narrator. Butcher. Butcher has no proof of rape. Butcher has no proof of the murder or suicide of his wife. He has video of her going into Homelander's room, or office, whatever it was, coming out 3 hours later disheveled, becoming very distant and uncommunicative towards him in the succeeding weeks, sitting on a bench for 3 hours and then disappearing for 8 years, never to be heard from again. And while there is no proof, Butcher's theory certainly makes a logical sense. From his perspective, Becca loved me. She would never cheat on me, but here she is coming out of Homelander's office, wrecked. She's distant and won't talk to me. She must be traumatized. Her trauma leads her to the bench in contemplation, and then afterwards, She leaves, and I never hear from her again. Her trauma must have either caused her to kill herself, or that fucking bastard Homelander took her out so she wouldn't talk. Killed my wife. And so, the path of vengeance begins. However, the end of the story finds Becca alive and seemingly living quite well, raising Homelander's son. Shocked to see the two of them. A lot of questions come from this ending, but here's the main possibility. That Homelander was telling the truth. That the sex was consensual. That completely alters the view of the timeline of events, or the sequence of events, I should say. That the sex was consensual. Becca is then ashamed of herself, or is ashamed when she finds out that she's pregnant and her infidelity will be discovered. She begins to distance herself and pull back from her husband because of that shame, or because she is angry or whatever the case may be, but trying to hide her infidelity from Butcher. She sits on the bench to contemplate and then walks off to Vought so that she and the baby can disappear. The shock on her face at the end, oh no, not my husband. Oh my god, I haven't seen him so long. Oh my god, I can't believe it's Homelander here, I never wanted to see him again. The shock could be, oh no, I've been found out. It's really an ambiguous turn. Is she a victim, or is she the one who's been pulling the wool over everybody's eyes? And not in like the grand scheming way, not like a Palpatine, type of way where she's, playing both sides, against each other, or, manipulating Stillwell and Homelander and Butcher and everything like that. No, not at all. But just that she has found a way to get out of her shame. So those are the two things that were at the forefront of my mind in terms of theories and what was going on. By the way, I should probably say right now that I've never read the comics that this is based on. So I don't know if this is answered in those, or if maybe it's completely different from those comics. I have been hearing from others that the show, while being kind of faithful to the spirit of the comics, is kind of it takes some radical departures. But I'll do all that research after all this. But those of you who have seen it, come on, holler back at me. Let me know what you thought of the season, what you think about my theories. If you share those theories, if you have completely different theories of what's going on, I would love to hear it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're so inclined. Check out my channel for all my other content that I have on there, my short films, Yin and Yang and Assassin of the Flame, reactions, breakdowns, reviews, all that good stuff that's on there. Much more to come. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.